On December 20th, 1984, a 12-year-old in Greeley took a phone message after a Christmas concert. Her father found the garage open at 9:30. Who had been looking in the windows? Jonelle Renee Matthews was 12, adopted as an infant by Jim and Gloria Matthews, living in Greeley after a Santa Barbara start. On December 20th, 1984, she sang with Franklin Middle School Choir at a downtown Christmas concert. Her mother was out of state with a sick relative. Her father was at her sister Jennifer's basketball game. A friend's father, Russ Ross, drove Jonelle home. They arrived about 8:15 p.m. Shortly after 8:30, she answered the phone and took a message for Jim. That call is the last time anyone in the family can place her voice. The abductor, if the later verdict is right, is the only other person who heard what came next. Jim Matthews walked in at 9:30 p.m. The garage door was up. The house was empty. Jonelle's shoes and shawl sat by a heater in the family room, a spot she used. Jennifer came home at 10 o'clock and had not seen her sister. Police arrived at 10:15. They found footprints in the snow around the windows, as if someone had been looking in. No forced door. No fight debris. Jim thought it unlikely she would walk far without shoes in that weather. The scene reads like a removal, not a runaway. For weeks, investigators even watched her birth mother without telling her the girl was missing, a sidetrack that produced no recovery. The photo went onto milk cartons in a nationwide missing child push. On March 7, 1985, President Reagan mentioned Jonelle from the old executive office building. The House Congressional Record carried her name that spring. A chokecherry tree planted at Franklin Middle School later died. A plaque disappeared. In 1994, she was declared legally dead. Gloria later heard from the birth mother, Terry Vieira, who had hired a search consultant. The families eventually became friends. None of that public noise produced a body. Greeley police were still recontacting witnesses in 2018 with newer forensics. The carton had made her famous. The ground had not given her back. On July 23, 2019, excavators installing a pipeline near County Roads 34.5 and 49, about 15 miles southeast of the old Matthews house, dug into human remains. The Weld County coroner used DNA to identify Jonelle. Cause of death: gunshot wound to the head. The concert night disappearance was now a homicide with a gravesite. Jennifer later said knowing her sister had been murdered brought a kind of closure even before a name went on a charging document. The dirt had held the answer for 34 years while milk cartons yellowed in other people's refrigerators. On September 13, 2019, Greeley police named Stephen Dana Pankey a person of interest. He had lived about 3 miles from the Matthews home in 1984 and served as a youth pastor at their church. Twin Falls, Idaho, searched his condo on a warrant. Pankey had run for Idaho office more than once. He told a newspaper he did not know the family and had been home packing for a Christmas trip to Big Bear. Police later said documents he gave them about that trip contained false statements. He had spent years asking to talk to detectives, then declined to answer when they flew to Idaho in August 2019. The indictment said Pankey inserted himself into the investigation for decades, offering knowledge that grew inconsistent and incriminating. He claimed a rake had covered tracks in the snow. He claimed he watched students walk home from the middle school. His ex-wife, Angela Hicks, said the California trip started on December 22, 2 days late, and was unexpected. On the way back, he hunted radio news of the missing girl and made her read him newspaper stories. After they returned, he dug in the yard. A car stored on the property burned and went to a salvage yard. At a church service, Hicks said, "He muttered that a minister promising a safe recovery was a false prophet." Pankey was indicted on October 13, 2020 for first-degree murder and kidnapping, held without bail, extradited from Idaho. The first trial began October 14, 2021 and ended in a mistrial on November 4 when jurors could not agree on murder and kidnapping. They did convict him of a misdemeanor for false statements to police. Defense argued obsessive interest could be Asperger's, not guilt. On retrial, October 31, 2022, a Weld County jury convicted him of kidnapping and felony murder. Sentence: 20 years to life. Earliest release 2042, when he would be 91. He kept saying he was innocent. As of 2025, he was at Arkansas Valley Correctional Facility. The 1984 scene was small and specific. Shoes by heat, garage up, prints at glass, no struggle, a message on a pad. Those details survived into the 2020s because they were written down while the snow was still on the lawn. Pankey's later stories about rakes and radio news sit against that first hour. A jury decided the later stories were not curiosity. They were a man circling a crime he had committed. Appeals talk continued after the verdict. The remains in the pipeline trench still read as a gunshot on a concert night. Jennifer Mogensen said the family felt some closure when they learned Jonelle had been murdered, and called Pankey's arrest another gift. Jim Matthews, she said, was especially glad to see a courtroom. Sibling rivalry from 1984 never got a second chapter. That is the human remainder after the legal remainder. A sister who grew up, a father who waited, a milk carton that outlived the tree at the school. The legal file now has a name, a sentence, and a gravesite. The concert program still lists a 12-year-old who did not make it to Christmas morning. Colorado still holds him at Arkansas Valley. The case status line that families wait for finally changed. Solved with a living defendant and a sentence of 20 years to life. Earliest date 2042. That does not rewind 8:30 p.m. on December 20th, 1984. The concert, the phone message, or the shoes by the heater. It does mean the milk carton era for this name has a last chapter that most of those cartons never got. Pipeline steel, DNA, a mistrial, and a second jury did what the first winter of Flyers could not. She took a phone message after a Christmas concert. She left her shoes by the heater. 31 years. Later, a pipeline crew found a gunshot wound to the head 15 miles from home. In 2022, a Weld County jury wrote Stephen Pankey's name on a kidnapping and murder verdict after a hung first trial. He is serving 20 to life. That is the documented arc from 8:15 p.m. to a gravesite to a sentence. If you want the next case built the same way, documents first. And no invented ending, stay with that rule. Subscribe if you want the next case broken down the same way.